I can think of no one better to address this topic, frankly, because it is a global security issue when we talk about energy security and the transition. What is Saudi Arabia's role in your mind?
We are a large energy producer in the world. We are committed to providing security of supply. We are committed to ensuring balance in the markets between supply and demand. And we are working towards a greener future where we have reliable renewable energy. And Saudi Arabia has made tremendous investments in this, whether it's domestically through the Saudi Green Initiative, through the Middle East Green Initiative, whether it's in partnership with other countries. We have issued green bonds, and we are very committed to this issue. We believe that the discussions that take place need to be less emotional and more practical and more scientific in order for us to overcome the challenges that the world faces and to achieve the objectives that we all want to achieve.
Does that less emotional equate an understanding that there needs to continue to be investment in oil and gas?
Of course, there has been underinvestment in oil and gas for many years because of the concerns that people have about investing in this field. This underinvestment has led to a reduction in the spare capacity that's available, and as global demand for oil and gas increases, the ability of producers to produce will not be there, and we will be hitting a wall, and this will lead to one of two things: an increase in prices or a shortage of supplies.
In your mind, are we going to see an increase in prices this year?
I cannot predict the markets. I can tell you that Saudi Arabia works very diligently and very hard to ensure that there is a balance and equilibrium in the markets between supply and demand. Our objective is to avoid increases in prices because those hurt the global economy. We also want to avoid a crash in prices because that also hurts the global economy and in the long run. So we're looking for balance, but there are many factors at play here, whether it's geopolitics, whether it's supply demand, whether it's economics, fundamentals, investment, as you mentioned earlier. All of these issues come into play and have an impact on the level of equilibrium in the markets.
So I just had the chance, as you know, to sit down with the CEO of Saudi Aramco. They are the producer of about 10% of the world's crude oil, which is a huge number, frankly, for a state-owned company, state-backed company. It's interesting, isn't it? Because when you take a step back and you think about what the transition will actually look like going forward, and you think about Saudi Arabia's contribution therein, there's been so much noise over the last 6 months, especially about Saudi Arabia's role as the head of OPEC Plus, and also as what His Royal Highness has said to me many times, the guardian of global energy markets. But in your mind, given where oil is today, is it fair to say that Saudi got it right with the cuts we saw in October?
It's not only fair. It's absolutely correct. We saw an overhang of oil. We saw a possibility of markets crashing, and we saw what happened several years ago when oil markets crashed, and there was tremendous damage to producers all around the world, including in the United States, and we saw the world moving to try to stabilize the markets and deal with the negative impacts of this oil crash. So we saw an overhang. All the data pointed to this, and we took action to ensure that we can maintain market stability. And since that decision was made, the price of oil has actually trended down in a moderate fashion rather than went up. So all the concerns that some people had about, oh my God, alarmist prices will increase, didn't happen. The price remained stable. In fact, prices today are less than they were a year ago. So obviously, this is the best and the biggest proof that the Kingdom's assessment was correct, and that the decision taken by OPEC Plus was the correct decision to take.
Saudi Arabia does raise a lot of eyebrows, particularly in recent years. There was a report by our colleagues in NBC News about ballistic missiles being made in the desert outside of Riyadh with the Chinese. Can you tell me, is that happening?
I think Saudi Arabia will do whatever it does in order to protect its security and to protect its people. Saudi Arabia has major defense programs. I cannot talk about individual defense programs and what we do and what we don't do, but we are a sovereign.
But you're not denying it.
We are a sovereign country, and we will do everything we can to ensure that our people are secure and a nation is secure. And we don't comment on any specific programs that we may or may not have.
With Iran at 60% uranium enrichment, are you less safe today?
I believe that Iran has an obligation to give up its nuclear program. I believe that the Iran must be in compliance with the terms of the International Atomic Energy Agency, and Iran, if it wants to be a member in good standing of the international community, needs to respect international law, needs to respect the international order. Issues like interference in the domestic affairs of other countries are not acceptable. Providing ballistic missiles to terrorist groups is not acceptable. We have had a series of conversations with the Iranians about
what about providing drones to Russia? Is that unacceptable?
Providing drones to the Houthis in Yemen is also not acceptable. So we believe that Iran's actions and policies need to be moderated. We are ready to welcome Iran into the community of nations and deal with it as a good neighbor if the Iranians are willing to do the same.
With that kind of uranium enrichment and with what they're doing to women?
It's really up to the Iranian people and the Iranian government to decide where it wants to position itself relative to its neighbors and relative to the international community.
But you don't see the US being able to push a JCPOA right now.
What I'm saying is that we in Saudi Arabia are willing to meet Iran halfway if the Iranians are willing to change their policies, and we have made that also very clear to them. With regards to what is happening inside Iran, that is really an internal Iranian issue. We don't interfere in the affairs of other countries. And with regard to the United States position, that is really up to the American government. But from our perspective, countries need to adhere to international law. They need to adhere to the principle of non-interference in the internal affairs of other countries, and they need to become good neighbors.
Tell me this. Obviously, you're fronting the climate file at this point, and when we speak to those in the West, particularly in Europe, they see climate change as the #1 threat, not just to the global economy, but to the future of the world. In your mind, what is the #1 threat to folks in 2023?
I believe climate change and environmental issues are extremely important. We depend on our climate. We survive or don't survive on planet Earth based on how we deal with these issues. They affect every single human being. They also have an impact on geopolitics. If you have desertification, you have lack of food, you have migration, you have disruption of political order in other countries. I mean, it is critically important to the future of humanity. And Saudi Arabia is committed to this. We believe that the issue of climate change and the issue and environment issues can be dealt with. We have the technology, we have the science, we have the resources, financial resources, to deal with these issues. What is lacking is a rational debate based on science and reason rather than an emotional debate that is driven by grandstanding and the desire to score political points. That gets us nowhere. We can solve the problems of the planet. We can solve global warming if we do it in a rational way, in a systematic way, and in a non-emotional way based on science and technology. And in all fairness, I'm beginning to see the debate slowly shifting in that direction. Nowhere near where it should be, but hope springs eternal, and my hope is that we will continue to move in that direction in order to solve these problems that present incredible challenges to humanity.
Another incredible challenge to humanity is Vladimir Putin. And when we're talking about rational debate and unemotional conversations, Saudi Arabia continues to speak to Russia, not just as a member of OPEC+, but also as a negotiator, frankly, on several different issues. Do you believe that Saudi Arabia can help bring an end to this conflict?
We are working with both Russia and Ukraine in order to see what we can do about ending this conflict. We have worked with both sides in order to bring about a release of prisoners of war, including American citizens.
But you consider him a rational negotiator?
We have to assume that everybody is a rational negotiator and everybody is trying to protect their own interests as they see it. And our objective is to try to find a way to bridge the gaps between the two sides, try to be a venue or a platform for dealing with these issues. We have had successes with the prisoner of war issue. We have had successes with the release of the American, it was imprisoned, the athlete in Russia. We will continue. We have worked with other countries in terms of opening the export of grain out of silos in Ukraine so that we can avert a global food shortage. We will continue to work with other countries and with both Russia and Ukraine to see what else can be done. The important thing is to try to work on an end to this conflict and then try to work on what we can do in the future to ensure stability and security for our world.